to the second temple, a building, Jesus couldn't fulfill it, so it was destroyed just before Jesus was born. The temple in that context isn't speaking about a physical building. The temple can also refer to the land, as numerous texts like Ezra chapter 2, verse number 68 makes clear, and Haggai chapter 2, verse number 3, where it says, have you seen this temple in its former glory? Meaning what? This temple is the same as the temple before. For God, there's no such thing as 1, 2, 3 temples.
Thank you. Dr. Brown.
Yes, so that's a great point that was made, because explicitly over and over we're told it was Yahweh himself, not an agent, Yahweh himself, that he came down on Mount Sinai. The 19th chapter of Exodus, the 24th chapter, they saw the glory of the Lord like fire, and he spoke from there. Everyone was terrified because of his presence, so explicit. And all it's saying is that he came from Sinai, and then just check any commentary. He rose like the sun upon Seir, and he shone forth from Paran. It's just talking about his splendor and his glory. That's all it's talking about. And again, universally understood in terms of the event at Sinai and the shining forth of God from there. And by the way, you just heard Jews always speak of the second temple, because there was a second temple. And people talk about a future third temple. The second temple was the second temple. Just Google it, all right? Everyone will say the same thing. The second temple is the second temple. That's where Jesus came. And once again, fighting over these things because you can't fight over what the text actually does say. Thanks.
All right then. Now, is there a question for Dr. Brown now? No one puts their hand up?
There we go.
Okay, I think that the brother at the back actually put his hand up first, so...
I'd just like to say, I think the Muslim audience was more scared to see Dr. Brand than the speaker. Where are they?
I would like to ask a question.
No. It's a question for me. So if you don't have it, we have to be fair.
Sorry.
We have to be fair.
I think was religion, so I'll just... sorry? No, tell him he put his hand up right after him, so please go ahead, brother.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to ask, right, when you make the distinction between not having the Yod Vei Vav Hei inside the Quran and you're saying it doesn't appear there, that's, I think you're making an assumption, right? And I'd like to hear that in your answer. Why Yod Hei Vav Hei doesn't mean Allah. It's not referring to God in a way. So you're making it seem that they're completely distinct and different. Now, if that's the case, how do we know that they're distinct? Well, purely we go by the descriptions when Yahweh is mentioned. Because Yahweh is not mentioned, Yod Vei Vav Hei inside the New Testament. We accept that. Yeah? It's in Greek. Yeah? So when we say Allah and Yod Vei Vav Hei do not mean the same thing, surely we have to look at the text, as in like in order to see what they mean and if they mean the same thing.
Sure.
I'd like to know why you're so certain that can
be happy to answer that.
And also, as well,
that second question.
Okay, thanks.
Only one question at a time, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. Speaking in the name of Yahweh is very specific, because there are many other gods, and even speaking in the name of El, God could be ambiguous, and Baal could have a good meaning or a bad meaning. So speaking in the name of Yahweh was specific, speaking in the name of the God of Israel. All right, not just God generically. So Allah is the God, right? So a very distinct personage there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we can contrast, and this is a fascinating debate, the character of Yahweh in the Old Testament with the character of Allah in the Quran. And you'll see that there are distinct differences as well. Many distinct differences. Books have been written about that. And then thirdly, we have the Greek New Testament, but Jesus was not primarily speaking in Greek. And he does say to his disciples that he came in the name of his Father, that he reveals his name to them, so his fullness of his character. And if you look in the Syriac Peshitta, it actually does recognize where you would have Maria, where you would have references to Yahweh as well. But again, to repeat, it's very, very specific in terms of speaking in the name of Yahweh to distinguish him from all other deities. And it's not attacking Muhammad, it's simply to say he did not speak in Yahweh's name. And again, It is to understand that there are differences in the character of Yahweh, things said about him in the Bible that are not said about Allah in the Quran. And then lastly, we have the New Testament in Greek where you would have any reference to Yahweh written as Kyrios. But if you have passages that are quoted from the Hebrew Bible that have Yahweh, then Yahweh would have been used. So in as spoken in either Hebrew or Aramaic, Yahweh would have been used. It's just we have it in Greek because that's the way to get it to the massive number of people. So no dispute, no contradiction there. And again, Muhammad is not the prophet like Moses because Muhammad did not speak in Yahweh's name, among many other things.
Okay, Zakir, 1 minute.
Okay. As far as Huwa, Dr. Brand said, I'm saying this polemically. So Ibn Arabi from like 800 years ago, Imam Razi, and who else? Ibn Hajar, who said Huwa is the most powerful name of God. That was their opinion. He listed in the name. And Ya Allah, Ya Huwa, were they saying that polemically? They were waiting to debate Dr. Brand. As far as the name El, because Dr. Brand likes to say Allah is a generic name for God, El basically. This is what Margaret Barker writes in her book, The Great Angel, page 20. The Pentateuch tells us that El was the most ancient name for God, and that Yahweh, the name revealed to Moses and connected to the Exodus tradition, replaced it. That's what the opinions say. This is what Mark S. Smith writes in the early history of God. The original God of Israel was El. This reconstruction may be inferred from two pieces of information. First, the name of Israel is not a Yahwistic name with a divine element of Yahweh. So in other words, there were Jews, like there were Muslims, like Ibn Arabi, who made Huwa the most powerful name of God. And all it is in Israelite history, that became more dominant after. And they projected the name back onto the patriarchs, because Exodus chapter 6, verse number 3 says they didn't know the name.
Thank you. All right then. Now we have a question for the Zakir. Right then. So around the back, I'll start somewhere in the front. So you sir in the white shirt.
Thank you. Zakir, you've repeatedly used examples of Muhammad and related words in the Hebrew Bible as examples of prophecy of Muhammad. Ezekiel 24:21, I'll just read the verse briefly. Say to the people of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I'm about to desecrate my sanctuary, the stronghold in which you take pride, the delight, Muhammad, of your eyes. I'm about to desecrate the Muhammad of your eyes. Why is this verse not a prophecy of God desecrating or destroying Muhammad if the other verses which use the term Muhammad or a variant of it are prophecies of Muhammad's coming?
Okay. The first point is my position's being misrepresented as if I based the whole thing on a single word. I didn't. I showed the whole context is about the prophet like Moses. Number two, if you're not in tune with Semitic languages, names have meanings. For example, Ishmael's name's given, and there's puns on his name all over Genesis, and same thing with Isaac. Now, Himda is used for people, and it's also used for objects because it has a meaning in Hebrew, desire. So you refer to Ezekiel, I believe, chapter 24. That's speaking about it just as a word, describing the gold in the temple, whereas in Song of Solomon is speaking about a person. Just like Himda is used in places for objects, Himda is also given as a name, a title for Daniel in Daniel chapter 9, for example, which Rabbi Abrahamson, by the way, mentions that Ishhamodat is the same as Muhammad, by the way. And was that your only question? Yeah, so Song of Solomon, it gives his description, his mission, the time he will appear, time of exile. By the way, I want to get to this misrepresentation. Dr. Brand's mispronouncing the word, which is what the Quran says, Surah 3, Ayah 78. It's not Mahmud. Could you play the audio, please?
Oh, okay.
Yeah? And I've got more audios. I've got about 4. Play the other one as well. Surah 3, Ayah 78 says they twist the scripture with their tongue. That's what you're doing with his name right now, unless I pay these Jews. Because that's what one Christian apologist once said to me. The Muslims must have paid the rabbi. That's why I brought 4 this time. And the voweling's there, by the way. So please at least pronounce the word properly. Otherwise, you're just proving to us that this is the length you have to go through to deny him. Simple.
Okay. Thank you.
Boom.